Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into an ancient path to liberation, one described in some of the world's oldest spiritual texts. And this isn't about some leap of faith. It's framed as a really practical project. You're building a bridge to cross this raging river.
This idea, this powerful metaphor of crossing a dangerous flood, it's really at the heart of our story today. It speaks of a journey from what they call the near shore, struggle, confusion, suffering, all the way over to a far shore of peace, clarity, and, ultimate freedom.
So the texts describe our everyday lives, our normal experience, as being stuck on this side of the river, the near shore. And look, this isn't necessarily some place of constant tragedy, but it's marked by this subtle, fundamental dissatisfaction. You know that feeling? Like something's always just a little bit off or missing? That's it. The far shore? Well, that's the end of all that struggle.
Okay, so how do we do it? What exactly is this suffering we're talking about, and how in the world do you build the bridge to get to the other side? Let's dive into that. We're going to look at the diagnosis of the problem, the actual blueprint for the bridge, and then the incredible milestones you hit along the way. First up, let's figure out where we're starting from.
Right. The first step on any journey is knowing exactly where you are. And these texts, they offer a really clear, almost unsentimental diagnosis of the human condition right here on this near shore.
So the heart of this diagnosis is a concept called dukkha, which we usually translate as suffering. But what's so important here is that it's not just about, the big tragedies. It's pointing to that low-grade existential friction of everyday life, that kind of background hum of dissatisfaction that comes from wanting a world that's always changing to just stay still and be permanent.
And the source of all this friction? It's identified with surgical precision. It's craving. And we're not just talking about wanting a cup of coffee. No, this is that relentless, thirsty desire for things to be different than they are, for pleasure to last forever, and for pain to just go away completely. This is what keeps us chained to this shore.
So that's the big question, right? If craving is the problem, what's the solution? Well, the great thing is, these texts don't just leave us with a diagnosis, they lay out a super practical, step-by-step method for actually building a bridge across this flood of suffering.
And this is the blueprint for the bridge. It's built with three core, totally interconnected parts. First, living an ethical life. That calms your actions. Second, learning what's called sense restraint. Not getting completely hijacked by every notification or impulse. And third, training your mind through mindfulness to see things with just stunning clarity.
So, the whole foundation is ethical conduct. And this isn't about blind obedience to rules or anything. It's really about the psychology of a clear conscience. When you commit to not harming others, you create a life that's free from all that remorse and agitation. It's like building on solid ground, right? It's the stable base for the rest of the path.
Next up is sense restraint. Just think about how easy we get pulled into hours of doom scrolling or just replaying an argument over and over in our heads. This practice is all about learning not to get automatically swept away by all that. It's about creating this crucial little space between a stimulus and your reaction to it.
And you can see here how that restraint just blossoms into mindfulness, this clear, calm, moment-to-moment awareness. By paying attention like this, you start to settle all that internal chaos. You stabilize the mind so it can become this incredible tool for insight instead of just being a source of chaos.
Okay, so what happens when you build this foundation? When you consistently practice ethics, restraint, and mindfulness? Something pretty extraordinary happens. You don't just get better at meditating, you have a fundamental breakthrough. And this is what's known as stream entry.
Now, this is not just a good mood, okay? It's a massive cognitive shift. The practice leads you to a moment where you directly see and know for yourself that all of your experiences, everything, sights, sounds, thoughts, feelings, they're all inherently unstable and they're not really you. You see with total clarity that grasping onto them is what causes suffering. And that insight, it just cuts through this fundamental delusion that there's some permanent self in here being threatened. That's what makes it irreversible. You can't unsee it.
And this right here is the direct result of that insight. The mind is just transformed. Where it was once really unstable and easily hijacked by negative stuff, it becomes stable, described as unswerving. Those deep-seated beliefs that fuel our suffering, they're permanently weakened. So instead of being a source of trouble, the mind actually becomes this wellspring of joy, rapture, and deep, deep tranquility.
Okay, so stream entry is the beginning of the crossing.
It's the guarantee that you're going to make it. But the journey's end, the actual arrival on the far shore, that's a state of complete and total liberation known as Arahantship.
This is the ultimate destination. So how does it happen? Well, it happens by taking that initial insight from stream entry and just deepening it over and over through continued practice. You keep going until every last, tiny, subtle attachment and aversion is completely uprooted. It's described as the highest peace you can find, and it's realized right here and now. The fires of greed and hatred, they're completely put out.
So what does this perfected state actually look like in a person? Well, they are utterly steadfast, totally at peace. The texts say they're tamed and quenched. And this is crucial. The very unskillful roots and underlying tendencies for things like greed, aversion, and even that subtle sense of I am, they've been completely pulled out. The job is done. It's finished.
The descriptions of this final state, they often move beyond all the technical language and into this really beautiful, poetic imagery. They're trying to capture a sense of total release, of being completely unburdened.
I mean, just imagine this. Not just resisting a negative impulse, but not even having the seed for that impulse inside you anymore. That's what this points to. The very potential for future suffering has been just removed.
And here, in this direct declaration, you see the result. Those internal forces that fuel our discontent, that constant push and pull of attraction and aversion, they are simply gone.
So what's left when those fires are finally put out? It's not a void. It's a state of profound peace, of stillness, a kind of cool relief. The fever of craving is finally broken, and for good.
And this is the final, beautiful twist in the story. The perfected one is attached to nothing. Not the suffering of the near-shore shore, but not even the concepts and ideas of the far shore. They shed all the constraints, all the identities, all the shores, as easily as a snake sheds its old tight skin.
So there you have it. We've journeyed all the way across the stream, from the diagnosis of suffering on the near shore, to the practice of actually building the bridge, and finally to the profound freedom waiting on the other side.
But here's the thing. The texts don't just present this as some interesting philosophy to think about. They present it as an invitation, a practical map. It's really a challenge to stop endlessly tying a raft on the shore of suffering and to begin the work of actually crossing over.